Welcome to the Tech for Good podcast. We are very passionate about two things, technology and our world. In each pod, we will be interviewing some fascinating people, business leaders, but those with a special interest in solving the biggest issues facing humanity today. Think the environment, think healthcare provision during a pandemic, think global social injustice. If you want to know more about technology's immense potential to fix and transform, then you're in the right place. In this episode, I speak to Tim Guilliams. Tim is co-founder and CEO of Healx, a startup which has pioneered the use of machine learning in developing treatments for rare diseases. In the podcast, Tim tells the story of how a meeting with one man inspired him and his co-founder. He goes deep on Healx's use of data science and machine learning, and he shares his thoughts on the future relationship between healthcare and AI. But first, I ask Tim to explain the challenges around drug discovery and rare diseases.
So there are 7,000 rare diseases and 95% don't have an approved treatment. And worldwide, that impacts more than 400 million patients. And half of those are children. And if you want to have an idea of scale, in terms of population size, this is bigger than the population size of the United States. So many people assume that rare diseases are a small problem impacting very few people, but actually together, this is one of the biggest therapeutic unmet needs that we have today and one of the biggest global challenges.
That's some really shocking numbers, actually, Tim, when you put it like that. Why do you think this problem exists? Like, what has caused this, do you think?
Part of the problem is really around the broken drug discovery process. So on average, it costs $2 to $3 billion to develop a new drug, 10 to 15 years, and with a 95% failure rate. So the traditional drug discovery approach doesn't work for small disease populations, and therefore large pharma companies haven't really focused on the rare disease unmet needs. And this is really an area where machine learning, data science, etc., can make a major impact for patients in need.
And that's what we're all about, Tim, on the Tech for Good podcast, is learning how technologies like that can help solve problems like this. And that's where your company, Healx, comes in. Maybe tell the listener a bit about what you do.
So we're a mission-driven company. We focus on applying machine learning to find rare disease treatments in a different way, at a different scale, different speed, different cost basis. And we were inspired to set up the company when we met a rare disease parent called Nick Siro. That was back in 2014. And Nick has two children with an ultra-rare disease called black bone disease. And there's no treatments approved, or there were no treatments approved. And he was told by the medical profession that he should just enjoy the next few years with his kids. And Nick was just an incredible force of nature. And so he didn't take no for an answer. Nick went on a mission to try and find a treatment for his kids. And when we met him, he was trying to repurpose unusual chemical as a potential treatment and has done this extremely successfully. So that was now approved by the EMA last year. And we just understood then how big this therapeutic unmet need was, but also how machine learning could really help do this at a different scale in a different way. And so we set up a model where we work very closely with the patient groups and charities, because in rare diseases, they are really absolutely key. They are your experts. They are the ones who understand what the patients are going through, what a drug would ideally do for them. And they're also your drivers. They're your champions. And so they're the ones who make the impossible possible. And so for every project, we work very closely with the patient groups and charities in that disease to try and find a treatment together.
That's an extraordinary story, Tim, about the meeting with Nick. Maybe tell us like the circumstances around that. How did you meet him?
So we got an introduction with my co-founder. we were trying to think about the company, and we were focused on how to apply machine learning to really develop drugs in a different way and a different cost basis. And then very shortly after, we had a lunch at a place in Cambridge called La Maison du Steak, and that was with Nick, and we just realized then what he was trying to do and how smart he was. He was trying to make the most of existing treatments. And this, if you look at the rare disease challenge, basically, okay, you have 7,000 rare diseases, 95% don't have an approved treatment, but also if developing a new drug in the traditional way costs $2 to $3 billion per drug, you can't apply this model for rare diseases. And so you have to make the most of existing treatments and combinations of those. And that's really, the guy was just so smart. And then we realized how big of an impact we could have with our approach. And then what's also interesting is that my co-founder, David Brown, he's actually the inventor or co-inventor of Viagra. So he has the name on the original patent, and which is a classic example of a drug that was developed for a different use, and suddenly you realize that it has other effects. And so the two together, it was basically a no-brainer. We had this moment of like, okay, now we know what to focus on, and it really crystallized the mission and the purpose of the company.
I want to get a bit technical with you now, Tim, and talk about the model, the machine learning model you've developed. How is that working differently to how other similar models in drug discovery have worked before in order to solve the problems that we've talked about?
So there's two ways of really applying machine learning to drug discovery. The first one is to look at the current process and apply machine learning to make incremental improvements to that. And that's already useful because you can improve speed of certain steps, improve the likelihood of success of certain stages in the process. But what's also exciting is to be able to apply machine learning to really redefine your drug discovery process and paradigm. And that's really quite interesting. So if you look at the current drug discovery paradigm, that's called target-based drug discovery. So, and the hypothesis and principles behind that are very simple. It's based on one disease, one target, one drug. And actually, if you look at disease biology, we're way more complicated than that. We have more than 22,000 genes that go up and down in regulation. We have more than 8,000 metabolic reactions. So how do you choose one single target and then develop a program around that? And the challenge as part of the failure rate in drug discovery is that if you start with the wrong target and the wrong hypothesis, you're bound to fail in the clinic. And so we've developed an approach that was completely different from the beginning. So we start in a way that's called hypothesis-free. So we don't know what the disease target is, and we try not to bias the system. And we also go towards a more combinatorial approach where we have different targets, or they're also called mechanism of actions that can help get the patient better. And so we look a lot at drug combinations and how you can find the best combination of drug for a particular disease. And that's very different from your one disease, one target, one drug paradigm, which is the current drug discovery paradigm. It's just way too simple. And so a lot of the programs fail because you just start with a hypothesis that's overly simple, that's wrong. And that's really an area where data science, machine learning can help. And there's really two parts to that. One is on the new disease biology. So you have now an area of data that it's called omics, and that's kind of your genome, your transcriptome, your proteome, your metabolome. The list continues. And that's new data types that you can use to really understand the disease biology in a different way, in a much more complex way, beyond a single target or a single gene. And so you can use algorithms to then match the right drug or drug combinations to that disease, but without biasing your original hypothesis. And then the other types of data are really much more graph-based. They're called, we've developed a rare disease biomedical knowledge graph, which is basically a database of relationships. And from the known relationships, you can start predicting new relationships. And it's a bit like a telescope. And you look at the universe of all the diseases, rare common diseases, and then you can zoom in the areas of interest and find potential new treatment applications for rare diseases.
Hi, I'm Daniel Brigham, editor of the Tech for Good magazine. I hope you're enjoying this pod, and if you want more, why not head over to techforgood.net for some amazing and thought-provoking stories. You can read about one company's mission to use digital technologies in the fight against HIV, or learn how social media can help refugees take control of their narratives. For those insights and more, read and subscribe at techforgood.net.
It's really interesting, Tim, and very clever, may I add. Tell us then about some of your success stories at Healx and how you've applied these techniques and these technologies to solve some of these problems. Have you got any particular accomplishments that you want to talk about, that you want to share with the listeners?
Yeah, definitely. So we were about to start a phase 2 clinical trial. That's in Fragile X syndrome. It's a rare neurological disease. And we started that as a partnership with the patient group that's based in the US. And it's gone exceptionally well. And so that's going to be a combination therapy that's never been tried for that disease before. The first patient will be dosed within the next couple of weeks. We got IND approval by the FDA, and that's a big milestone for the company. And we have another 20 programs behind that are moving towards the clinic. So that's really a major milestone for us, and also want to demonstrate that we can start predicting treatment combinations in a different way, in this hypothesis-free way to start with, and also at a different cost basis. We've been incredibly capital efficient, and that's just we're really proud of what we've achieved there, and are really excited about starting the clinical trial.
Amazing, and congratulations on that. That's very timely. Tim, I'm interested to know a bit more about you, actually. What's your background? Tell the listener a bit about your journey and how you got to where you are.
So by training, I'm a bioengineer and chemical engineer. I then moved to Cambridge for a PhD in biophysics. So very technical. So I'm basically a nerd. And I was just fortunate enough to meet my co-founder when I finished my PhD, and then meet Nick, this rare disease parent. And so we decided to start a company. And so I'm a first time founder and CEO. I don't have a business background, and it's just been an incredible journey. And I was really lucky to meet the right people on the way to mentor me, support through the good times, the bad times, and really also find the right investors, because we are a mission-driven company. And we found incredible investors that also believe in the mission of the company to find treatments for rare diseases, also at a different price with a different business model. And so that's been a really incredible journey so far. And we're scaling at the moment. So we're now about 135 people. We're going to double in size again over the next 12 months. So it is an exciting time.
How have you found that business journey side of it, Tim? You know, you're a scientist, a physicist, but you've had to kind of grow this business. Is a bit more about that. I mean, how have you found that?
I think it's really interesting, and I think it's there's a different type of founders now. You don't have to have an MBA and have a commercial background. I think it's okay to be a technical founder, be passionate about what you're doing, and then just be on a journey where you have to learn very, very quickly. And I think the biggest learning was really around investment and investor discussion, which was completely, new to me. And so that was an important learning as part of the journey. We've raised $70 million so far. We're going to raise significantly more. And I think that the important bit is to find the right people, to join the company, and that really believe in the same kind of mission and philosophy. And then it matters less. You'll be able to figure out the each challenge as it comes along, and it's really building this cohesive team that's aligned around what you're trying to achieve here, so that you can align the different stakeholders.
It sounds really exciting, Tim. And good luck to you with it all. I want to get your thoughts on the kind of broader healthcare technology landscape, because that's certainly something that has come under the microscope a bit during the pandemic, of course, and we've seen how technology is able to, what it's able to deliver ultimately in this healthcare context, and support patients when they need it the most. How optimistic are you about the future of machine learning and artificial intelligence in healthcare? Do you feel like we're on the cusp of a real kind of change in what we're able to offer, what hospitals are able to offer patients ultimately?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited about the future prospect, and now it's basically happening. There's never been larger amounts invested also in the space. So there's a few components that are important. On the one hand, there's the innovation, the new data, the machine learning that you can apply, and that's happening. But then you also need the investment in the space to really drive things forward and move things forward at a different speed, and that's also happening. I think there's been an enormous amount of capital deployed, and so I don't think there's ever been a better time to be a rare disease patient. For example, you can really be empowered to help drive treatments forwards and work with companies like Healx or others. I think it's an incredibly exciting time, and the proof is in the pudding. So I think you have now the first clinical trials that are starting with AI predicted drugs. This is real, and there's more to come. And so I think we're really gonna look back at this time as I think a major paradigm shift in healthcare and drug discovery. And there was almost a false start when the human genome was sequenced. There was a lot of optimism there, and I think what was a bit disappointing was that, okay, we thought a lot of the disease biology would be understood, but actually it's much more complex than just your genome. You also want to understand how all those genes are being expressed, how that's being translated into proteins, enzymes, etc. And that additional insight from a disease biology, all of this data is now available. And so I think, I'm very optimistic about the space.
And you must feel, Tim, that Healx is really at the cutting edge of that, especially, where you are in the country, that ecosystem of healthcare innovation, high growth startups like Healx really coming through and making a difference.
Yeah, definitely. We're based around Cambridge, and you have more than 4,000 startups in tech, biotech. Obviously, you also have the university. It's a very vibrant ecosystem. But what's super interesting now as well is we can reach out and work more decentralized as well. And so we can tap into, the best talent, whether on the tech side, on the biotech side, really across Europe and rest of the world. And I think that's been, let's say, one of the positives from the pandemic, is that basically the remote working was kind of accelerated. And so now you can go beyond your ecosystem in front of your door and tap into the best people worldwide. And so we have a hybrid model now as a company, and that's working really well. And we're able to really accelerate our growth and just work with the smartest people wherever they are.
And that acceleration that you've said there, Tim, and you mentioned earlier as well, it must be so exciting. I'm just imagining, what you feel the future holds for your company now. It must be really inspirational to be able to see how your work can, change people's lives and change the lives of people who previously had no hope, really, and giving them hope and giving them, treatment ultimately for rare diseases. How, as a business leader, as a successful business leader in that space, how fulfilling is that for you?
Yeah, it's incredibly rewarding. And I think the fact that we're able to work very closely with the patient communities is just so rewarding. It's not, we interact with them, we discuss which drugs could be helpful, etc., and you just get very close feedback, and you get a sense of purpose that's really incredible. And we also have people in the company who are affected by rare diseases or have family members with rare diseases. And so I think that's just a really rewarding process. And I think the future is very bright. So we think we can develop, or we are developing, an approach that's much more scalable. And one of the concepts that we're working on is really trying to drive things towards what we call a massively parallel drug discovery, where basically our system can start predicting drugs and ranking drugs for 7,000 rare diseases at a time, and then tell us which ones are the most tractable with a higher likelihood of success, so that you can really change the way, radically change the way drug discovery is done and how people think about it. And so we're very hopeful that our impact can go, way beyond what's been possible in drug discovery and development so far.
That was the Tech for Good podcast. Listen, subscribe, and rate us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Stitcher.